Welcome back. It is always a good day when I wake up, I give thanks, and I realize today is a day that I'm allowed to record and introduce you to another spectacular human being. Before I introduce my guest, Joice, I'm just going to do a quick little housekeeping. Boy, the show just keeps growing and growing. So I'm up to so many countries now. Of course, United States, Canada, UK, Australia, France, Hungary, Germany, Italy, India, which is brand new, and the United Arab Emirates. So I'm super excited. Welcome to all the countries and all the various cities that are listening all across the globe. It really does matter when you listen, you share the podcast, you download the podcast, and I'm just very, very grateful. So many fun guests are coming up for you this year, too. So aside from that, I want to thank you for joining me on the Facebook page, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And thank you so much. The Facebook community is powerful. I mean, I cannot believe how many cool people are there. So it's really fun for me to actually see you, because I can see you once you're on the Facebook page, because I know you're out there listening, but then when you join us on the Facebook page, I can actually have a dialogue with you. So don't leave me hanging in my small little studio here in San Diego. My guest today, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years we've known one another, but when I was back in the terrestrial radio world and I was working at the group of radio stations here in San Diego, it was KSON, KIFM, and would be FM 94.9 now. I worked for that group and I was the public affairs director, and I had this really cool show. It was kind of almost like a podcast before podcasts were a thing. It was a 30-minute public affairs show, and Joice used to bring me some of the greatest guests onto my show. And so that's kind of how our relationship got started. Her name is Joice Truban Curry. She is the president of her own company. It's called C3 Communications. It is public. What would you say, Joice? It's pretty much like marketing, and
it's a public relations agency.
Public relations, and you know, I like to call you like the San Diego maven of media. So welcome to the show. I'm so happy. Here we are 20 years later, and I get to interview you. So I'm thrilled to have you here.
Me, Jane. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And your platform and your show is amazing. And I appreciate being a guest today.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. Now, you know, Joice, the next room is all about, I know it's so funny. It's like, to me, death is dinner conversation, because I feel that if we accept the fact that obviously we're not going to be here forever and this life is super precious and fun, and the more that we kind of face that, you know, that we're not immortal, that, you know, we are going to move on from this phase, this portion of the program, the more richly we can live in this life here and now, and we appreciate it more. So this show covers everything from soup to nuts with in regard to death, dying, grief, wills and trusts, hospice care, afterlife, you name it, I'll talk about it. So you're coming on the show today because you have had so much experience in this world recently with your sister Trish, and I know your parents, and you've had a lot of heartbreak and grief lately. So let's start there. You're coming on the show to talk to me and tell me, what is it that you've been going through as far as having to say goodbye to, what, 4 very close family members?
Wonderful question, Jane. And I hope that I can give some nuggets to your listeners out there and they can get some good points and it'll help them. But yes, it did happen. My sister died. My dear sister died of esophageal cancer. And then my mother-in-law died, and she just had a stroke, just went. And then my mother died of liver cancer, and she never drank in her life, which is kind of wild.
That is.
And then my dad died of Alzheimer's.
Jeez.
So it's a narrative that if people follow me on Facebook, they've watched this unfortunate journey. And people come up to me and they don't believe it. I mean, I'm in it and it's my narrative and it's my family, and I don't even believe it. So it's kind of fun. It's like, yeah, that really did happen. All of it, it did. And it's interesting you ask about the grief because um, with cancer in chemo, it's pretty mapped out. My mother and my sister both lived exactly 9 months from when they were diagnosed.
Mm,
And then with Alzheimer's, that's a biggie because that just drags. It could
right.
just go, and it went for 5 years. So it's interesting because each of their deaths, I'm just talking about my family specifically, not my mother-in-law at this point, but each of their deaths, I mean, they had different grieving periods. My sister's meant one thing, my dad's meant something different, my mother's meant something different. So there's not like a one grieving situation here. It's different for each person.
Absolutely. Do you find that grief really never ends? We just sort of learn how to cope with it. Each time we have to go through that process again and say goodbye to somebody in the physical sense.
Yes, I do agree with that statement. I think it depends on the situation because in the case of my dad, he was the hardest and he went in November. So he just passed. He passed about 2 weeks before my 50th birthday. He did
Wow.
not, his birthday's a week after mine. He would have been 86.
Mm,
But his death was really bad. And it took a reporter um, to point it out to me that he died twice. And I couldn't figure out why it was so hard when the other two are just they bad cancer deaths. So all three of them had bad deaths. Okay, like there is a good death, but they were not good in regards to like pain and suffering and what have you. But when my dad died, I couldn't figure out why it hit me so hard. It was the third one, and the reason why is because of Alzheimer's. You lost the person twice.
mm,
So what my dad was when he died, he was a shell of himself. It wasn't him. The dad that I knew that I grew up with, he was amazing. He was my hero. Um, that was long gone, but yet his body was still there. He just couldn't talk or walk anymore. He hadn't talked like in 2 years.
mm,
So it was that much harder to answer your question because no one, I couldn't figure out why. And the reporter was like, Joice, hey, this is what happened. This is why it's so hard. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then my husband and my friends were like, oh my gosh, like how did we miss that? It
right.
makes complete total sense. But so I think it depends on what the situation is to fully
Right.
answer your question.
Well, that's why they call it the long goodbye. It's I've had many friends have to go through that with parents and grandparents, and it's very, very difficult because you lose them twice, right? You lose them when they don't have the communication skills or the awareness of who you are anymore because they've retreated inside. And then when they physically actually leave. Um, you have a great story that I really want you to share with the listeners about your sister, Trish.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after she passed, and it has something to do with a popsicle stick. So please share that because I love honoring our loved ones and doing things in a unique fashion. And every time someone does something new that I haven't heard of, I like to share it so that maybe it triggers something with someone else and they can do the same thing or something similar. So please share that story.
Oh, I'd be happy to. So Trish I'm the youngest of three. My middle sister is Trish, and she passed away from esophageal cancer. And when she died, she wanted to be buried in Maui. And I was talking to my friend, and somehow Flat Stanley, everyone knows who Flat Stanley is.
Of
Somehow
course.
that came up. And my friend's husband is he at the time he worked at Pixar and now he works at Paramount, and he's drawn so many amazing characters in Toy Story, everything you can imagine. So he drew her. I sent him a picture. He drew her. She's a preschool teacher, so she turned the picture into a laminated popsicle stick. Sent me four of them. So we flew popsicle stick Trish to Maui. And so we decided that we would make it a journey. So I took a picture of popsicle stick Trish in the cockpit the pilots let me do it. It was crazy. With a drink in first class, and she's like having a drink. And then we started handing her to locals when we were in Hawaii. She actually went to her own little ash gathering that my husband and I did, and she was right there in the popsicle stick. And then we had a whole adventure, and every day of the trip, people were like, well, what's her adventure today? So then somebody came up with a hashtag tripping with Trish. And then every morning people were asking me, like, what's her adventure today? So every day I'd have to post what her adventures were. And she had an entire album. And I gave the original one that went to Hawaii to my uncle that lives in LA. I sent one to her nursing department. She was headed a nurses department at Kaiser in Ontario. And I have one that still lives with me here.
I love
So
it. I
it's a
love it.
very cool thought. And it made that trip because literally it was going over there just to bury somebody. We literally did a
Right.
turnaround and came back. But I hope people can take that and embrace it because I still have it. And then I was able to share the other popsicle stick Trishas with other people that she loved.
I
So
think
it's
it's
kind of a
wonderful.
cool thing.
It's really great. What a lovely way to honor someone's memory. And I follow you, we're friends on Facebook. So every day that was happening, when I saw her in the cockpit and then I saw her in first class having a cocktail, I got the biggest kick out of it. Because what a lovely way to keep Trisha's memory alive. And also the way that I feel with, I'm all about the woo woo and the afterlife. I feel that you actually took Trish with you, that not just the popsicle stick version, but she was right there with you and your husband, Sean, on this journey to go say fare thee well and do her ash ceremony on Maui, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. Um, let's stay on afterlife, do you get signs or have you had different occurrences that are almost, some people say, oh, it's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I just feel that we're forever connected. You cannot kill us. We're energy, right? We just change forms. So do you personally, or have you had some signs that have happened to you in regard to those that have moved on?
Great question. And I do believe, like you, there is an afterlife. And I do believe that people do come down. And so I look at them as three angels. I've got my mom, my dad, and my sister Trish. So that's Andy, Dora, Trish. So they come down in various different times in various different forms of love. Like sometimes I'll have a bad day and I'll like just say, guys, come on, help me. And I feel like this big warm hug come over me.
Mm.
Recently I was at a conference in Oklahoma, which I've never been to. Nice, great people there, super nice people. God love the Midwest people. They're nice. And just randomly, my daddy, Andy, and that's why I'm telling you his name, he had a phrase called Andyisms. That's what I call him. He always had these wonderful, like one-off phrases that he would say all throughout life. And one of them was, ignore everything before the word but.
Mm.
Great phrase. I love you,
Mm-hmm.
bud. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sitting in this conference in a hotel in Oklahoma City, and the speaker says that phrase. And I'm like, huh?
Wow. Hello, Dad.
Whoa, dad, you're here. Dude, no one says that phrase other than my dad, Andy. No one said
I've
that phrase.
never heard that before.
I know, it was totally trippy. And so in the conference, I run back upstairs because Sean, my husband, was upstairs working and I was in the conference. I'm like, you will not believe what just happened. And he goes, no way. That is just a one-off phrase that nobody would ever say. And
Right.
the speaker said it. And I'm like, and there's my dad.
Yeah. Isn't that
Fast
cool?
forward to that evening, it's still in Oklahoma. They had a band playing. It's like one of those nice little cocktaily things that they do. And they sang a song. Well, my favorite song, my favorite musical, and I'm very much into musical theater, which Jane, is Big River, which was started in San Diego at La Jolla Playhouse, and it won the 1997 Tony Award. And it's about Huckleberry Finn, the book. And there's one song in it about a character, and I used to do professional musical theater. I always wanted to play. Never played her, but I used that song as my audition song. Nobody knows this musical. It's very obscure. It's not known as like Hamilton or anything like that. And we're sitting there and they start playing the one song that my sister and I loved from the musical that I love. And I look at Sean in this room of a ton of people that have no idea what's going on. And we're like, what the hell? So Trish came down. So two people in the same
Wow.
day in Oklahoma 2 weeks ago.
Wow. Ah, I just got goosebumps. I absolutely love that. And, I talk to people about this. We just did a course on connecting in afterlife with my partner, the Grave Woman. And one of the things that we talked about was once you actually receive a sign, is to believe that that is what that is instead of trying to explain it off and, oh, that could happen. No, that phrase of your dad's, ignore everything before the
Before the
word
word
but.
but. Mhm.
I've never heard that before. So that is an Andyism. And here's the speaker saying your dad's words. And then to have some obscure song from, Big River being played. I mean, wow. So your dad and your sister were both saying, we're here with you, Joice. We're here with you. We're at the conference, and kind of like this little shout out. Boy, that's great. So did mom appear during the thing, or did she just stay in the background?
No, she was just hanging out,
Just
but she
hanging
has
out.
appeared. She has
That's
appeared, like a lot of times at night, or if I'm having a tough day, like I said, like the warm hug comes over. That's my mom. So
right. I love
yeah,
that.
she was just kind of chilling in the back of the conference in Oklahoma, but she does come down a lot.
Being the president of your own company, and congratulations. I mean, C3 has had staying power in San Diego County. It's very well respected and well regarded.
Thank you.
I don't know how many years now have you been doing this?
23 years,
I was going to,
January the 3rd.
wow, over 23 years. Congratulations.
Thanks,
Being the
Jane.
president of your own company, do you ever worry about being outspoken about things of this nature? Do you ever worry like, oh, somebody's going to think I'm a little loony bin or whatever?
No, actually, I don't. It's a great question, though. People really have been tremendously supportive, very kind, questioning, like, is this really real? I'm like, yeah, that really did happen. All that, they're all up there. They're gone. So I get more of that. And then I get a hell of a lot of Joice. You had just a bad deal sent to you. So I get that too.
Yes.
So people are pretty cool about it. They
Yeah.
are. And then I've got people that are concerned about me and they check in with me, that people I don't talk to a lot. So it kind of runs the gamut. But yeah, everyone's
Let's
been pretty great.
let's talk. We're going to do a little minor pivot.
Mhm.
Your sister, she left things sort of at loose ends. And I'm doing a show, as a matter of fact, just the show that just aired a few weeks ago was permanent.org, and it's about keeping all of your legacy basically in a digital space, in a safe space, an encrypted space, so that you can have all your affairs in order. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about what you had to go through with your sister?
Sure.
Because I think it
I'd be
really,
happy to. And
yeah.
history will repeat itself, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
So my sister Trish did not have a living trust. She didn't have a will. They had no kids. Her husband was already in heaven. So there wasn't a real burning desire for her to fill out the necessary information. And then when she got sick, she just kind of said, I'm not going to do it. F it.
Wow.
You know, I don't care. It's not my problem.
Wow.
So what that created was a huge problem, and this is what I would like to share with people that are listening. It, it if she would have died in the city of San Diego versus the city of Riverside, it wouldn't have taken 2.5 years to sell her estate. So every city and every county and every state and every country has different rules and processes. So because she didn't fill out the paperwork saying these are my intended wishes, it went into probate. And in California, probate is not very kind. We're kind of a bureaucratic state, as you know, Jane. And so that's just kind of how we roll here. So she died on February the 4th in 2021. It went finally in front of the judge on February the 9th, as in a few weeks ago.
Wow.
It took that long.
Hmm.
Now here's what's going to happen again. My uncle, who I do not, I took care of my sister's estate. I was the person in charge. My other sister, Catherine, my older sister, takes care of my uncle's estate. He and my sister Catherine and myself are the only last three people in my family. We're completely annihilated otherwise. So my uncle, I called him and I said, dude, you need to like do this. Do you want this to happen? Because he knew that what happened with my sister Trish. And he goes, I go, you can do it, or you could just say, not my problem. And he goes, he's not going to do it. So my
Wow.
sister Kath, and I don't know,
Hmm.
the man's 85 years old. He could do whatever the hell he wants. I don't know. I
Wow.
told him, I explained it, but I think sometimes you've got your family members out there that they're just like, it ain't my problem. And then the
Yeah.
people that are left are stuck cleaning it up. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, my sister Catherine will have to clean up my Uncle Joe's estate whenever he decides to join his brother and my mother and my sister in heaven.
Yeah.
And that's his choice. And my sister made the same choice.
Yeah.
So, if you can encourage your people to, you know, get something legally done, it will help them. But in both cases of my uncle and my sister, they're like, I'm dead. It's not my
Right.
problem.
Yeah. And, let this be a cautionary tale because, in my opinion, this is purely my opinion, I think it's a little bit on the selfish side not to take care of your affairs and leave a big frickin' mess for those that are left behind, because
I agree.
it's difficult enough to process death and to go through the grieving process if you are mired in paperwork and probate and all of these things. It's like, really? I have another friend that has a very similar story, and theirs is still not settled, and it's been years, and there's property involved, and it makes me very sad. I think you owe it to, I mean, I understand if you don't have children and whatever, but there are other people like you, your sister, you had to take care of that. So,
I call it the gift that keeps on giving, Jane.
yeah, yeah. Get your
It's just,
affairs in order. It's not
it's,
that hard, and it's
it's not
not
that
that
hard.
no, it's not. And I think what it is people just avoid it. It's like, oh, I don't want to think about death. It's like, well, you know what? You're gonna die. It's a matter of how and when. So get it together, put your things in writing. That's why this, Joyce, I'll turn you on to permanent.org. They actually are an organization. It's a nonprofit here in San Diego, and you only pay for what you use. So it's like $10 for 1 gig, I believe. But if you're the Next Room listeners, they're giving you 3 gigs free. But you can park everything there. You can put your living will, your trust, recipes. You can record yourself doing a love letter for a niece or nephew or child or future grandchild. It's amazing. It's such a cool concept. And we're all digital these days, right? Everybody's walking around with this in their pocket. So, okay, I told you this would go fast. You have been a fascinating guest. I love that we covered something fun, something sad, and something that honors. And then, of course, we talked about the wills and trust thing and getting your affairs in order. Anything in closing that you would like to share with the Next Room listeners?
I would love to tell you this. If your family is still alive, please call them, talk to them,
Mm,
because every day I wish, I'm going to start to cry. Every day I wish there was a phone to heaven.
mm,
I can't ask any questions. So if you have a loved one and you haven't talked to them in a while, please call them, email them, reach out to them, text them, do whatever, send a carrier pigeon, whatever that might look like for you. Because I can't. But
yeah,
if you still have them, you can.
that's great advice. And it's so true. It's those little things that you wonder about, like after mom left, my mom, I really treasured that time with my dad. And I would ask him just the most ridiculous things. And I took notes. His first job, he was a pin setter at a bowling alley because it was back in the day they didn't have the automatic things that came down. So
Actually,
he was,
people that did that? Oh,
yes, he was a
that's
pin setter.
cool.
I know. But see, I would not have known that had my mother not left. And I'm like, Mom, I wanted to ask you so many things. And, it's so good too with the elderly. If you have an opportunity, videotape them. And if they're not comfortable being on camera, just get them talking about their life and do it from the side, so that you're not right in their face, because you will cherish the voice, those lessons, the wisdom that comes from them. So thank you for that, Joice. That's beautiful. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm just I'm so happy that we've continued with our friendship. And you can always send people my way. You know that. You brought me some of my favorite guests back in the day. So if anybody wants to talk about death, dying, grief, green burial, wills and trusts, anything, I am wide open. And it doesn't have to be someone that is a New York Times bestselling author. I'll interview my neighbor next door if they want to come on the show. I think that that's the fun part about doing this, is getting real people to tell their real stories, like you with Popsicle Stick Trish. I think you're going to start a movement with this. I really do.
Jay, thank you so much for having me. And I hope everyone out there is blessed. And, again, I can't underscore enough, there's no phone to heaven. So if you've got the people here, reach out to them.
Awesome. Joice Truban Curry, thank you so much. President of C3 Communications in San Diego. She also does things in other cities as well. Wasn't Miami a big one? You do boat shows, you do all kinds of stuff. You do things up in Los Angeles. So if you're listening and you need somebody that's just extraordinary in PR and marketing, reach out to Joice. Joice, I'll put your bio and all the information and the link to C3 Communications in the show page. So thanks again for coming on The Next Room. It is my pleasure to bring you interesting people and to keep the lines open, keep the line open of communication about this life that we have. And we're so blessed to still be here in the physical sense, but also to still have that connection with those that have gone before us and transcended to the next room. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.